First of all, thank you to everybody. Thank you to the film festival, the volunteers, everybody who's working there, and you, Jackie, as well, Joe, everybody. Yes, I connected with Center for Investigative Reporting. I went to hear about these stories that they're reporting on right around 2017. Nate had been reporting out these stories even before that, and came in and sort of heard about some of the reporting at that point, and then we kind of discussed what these stories seem to be pointing towards, but there wasn't really completely a full thesis because they're disparate things that Nate had kind of like been researching and reporting out all around the world. And so just in the process of kind of meeting them and deciding to do the documentary, even though at that point we weren't exactly sure what the through line was, I became attached as a director, and we kind of pursued it, and we pursued it for the next 6 years.
Fantastic. And Nate, you're protagonist in the film, so you sort of carry it along. How did you piece this all together? Because it's a very layered and complicated film. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, from my standpoint, I was investigating all of these disparate things that sort of revolved around food and water. But, Gabriela really came in, and huge credit to her, because this was no easy task. I don't know if I've ever worked on a project that had a more difficult narrative to show people all of the information that lived and existed in all of these different fragmented places around the world, and yet we're all completely interconnected. And Gabriela really came forward and found a terrific, really compelling, and I think, entertaining way to show this incredibly important information, so that we could get it out there in the world. Because these are a bunch of very, both geographically and sometimes seemingly thematically different things that are happening around the world, but ultimately are all tied together.
Has there been any movement in Arizona about the aquifer?
Yeah, the Attorney General of Arizona, who was elected and I think then took office in January, has announced that she's going to be investigating some of these foreign acquisitions, specifically the ones by the Saudis, and seeing, if she can unwind them or what she can do to better protect the water in Arizona. Of course, that all comes at the same time that it looks like Colorado River water is going to be slashed as the reservoirs continue to shrink. So it's a precarious and difficult situation, I think, for folks down there.
Arizona Waters, Colorado story was just in the paper. Gabriela, I'm a big fan of this film, and we had it at our festival, but I remember in Q&A when we asked, when Ron Simon asked you about how are you getting this out into the world, and you have a lot of political players in the film. Are you thinking about showing this to the government, the American U.S. government?
Yeah, Nate, do you want to speak to that? Because I think we were talking about Sacramento at some point and things like that.
Yeah, so people have reached out to us from the government and asked to watch it. People that are in the film obviously work everywhere from the DOD to the State Department and elsewhere, and folks have reached out and asked to view it, and I think has been taken pretty seriously across the U.S. government and also in other countries. For instance, Norway screened it, and their foreign minister watched it, and she now wants to. Their minister of development watched it, and she now wants to screen it for the entire foreign ministry. So we know that we want it in everyone's hands, but obviously policymakers can have their ability to see this information and then take action with it can be helpful. So we're continuing to hope that happens.
I feel that our audience here is a select group that now has all this information. So I'm going to get a microphone and see if there are some questions. I'm sure there are for you in the audience. Can we get a mic?
I'm curious, at the very end of the film, that last line, it's the phone call to that government official. Is there an update on that?
So, yeah, Brigadier Siachitema, the attorney that we feature in there, who got that call regarding that land, is now in the final processes of arguing that case in front of the Zambian Supreme Court. So far, both the appellate court and lower courts have all gone in favor of the people who were displaced, saying that not only were they wrongfully displaced, and it is in fact their land, and the investor in fact is not entitled to it, but they are actually, it is depending how, currently it looks like they're even going to get all of their land back. And so it's a real victory for Brig and for the people who were displaced.
It's such a powerful film, so I'm just wondering how people who couldn't come today or who couldn't come to our festival can see the film. Do you have distribution that's going to like a streaming service, or is there some way that we can get people to be able to see the film because it's so important?
We are in the kind of final stages of what could be a means to the world seeing the grab. We're hoping that it's late this summer, that you'll be able to see it in theaters, and then right after that streaming. We always get in trouble for saying too much about a deal when we're not allowed to talk about it all, but rest assured there's going to be information on our website, which is thegrabfilm.com, and that's going to point you towards where we're going to be able to screen the film, and have the audiences see it there.
I saw the film at the festival in December, and I'm so happy to see it again. I think this is the most important film I think I've ever seen in my life.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Every person in the entire world should see this film. And I really hope that you find a distributor who has the courage enough to show the film the entire. Is that likely? Are you being threatened in any way?
I would say, well, first, can I just give you like a huge thank you? Because anytime you work on something like this, one, to get a director of Gabriela's caliber, I'm going to speak immodestly about Gabriela, but to get somebody, a master storyteller, to be able to take such an important issue up and to share it and to be doing it for 6 years. There are so many times along the way when we are frustrated and you just feel like there's no way, and you just keep pushing because you know that the story needs to get told. And, sometimes it doesn't work out and people say that wasn't worth your time, but it really means a lot when you say it was. And I feel the same way, and we're hoping this information gets seen far and wide. And I will just say about risk, and I think I heard the question correctly, but I think just regarding risk, we definitely take it seriously. There are measures we take to mitigate it. You can never say something's risk-free. It's just how you manage risk, of course. But more importantly, I would say that the folks who are in the way of this movement, the folks in Zambia, the folks in Arizona, they're living with this reality every single day. And so people like Brig are putting their lives on the line every single day. And so for me to talk about my risk almost feels disingenuous because of how much others are putting on the line every day.
I will also say one more thing to that, in addition to saying thank you for saying that, but it's also, you also put your finger on something in terms of, having people who have the courage to be able to show the film. And that is a theme that we've encountered, like we are poking a lot of dragons and shaking a lot of hornets' nests. And it's just, there are so many reasons to, in my opinion, this is the point of what Nate does and investigative reporters do, and that is speak truth to power, and it's the fifth estate and all these things we really truly believe in. But we're just really uncovering a lot of stuff, and everybody's so many different powerful countries or people or institutions or corporations are complicit, you know, as are we in the way we do life sometimes, the way we eat and the way we throw away food. And so it's a complex issue, and we know it's a hot potato. And so we're just fingers crossed that there, you know, we are able to get out there, and that people are able to watch it and feel like, wow, this is an opportunity to see kind of what's behind the curtain, understand kind of the machinations of how the world works and how this is a film really about equality and inequality, and then be able to do life just a little bit differently as a result, whether it's looking at your understanding your pension plan, whether it's eating differently, whether it's shopping for food differently, or simply having the knowledge that these resources are scarce, and that the answer is not for one powerful entity to take it all for themselves. We have to find an interconnectedness in this world, because having one country like a Zambia starve is not a solution. It causes conflict. It breeds disease. Famine breeds disease. Refugees, and you know, this isn't a world we want to live in. So we kind of have to look after each other.
I just wanted to thank you for being such a master storyteller and pulling everything together. I can't even imagine the work and the time you put into this. And I was going to ask, as individuals watching this, what do you want us to take away in terms of what we can do? We saw someone like Grace who's fighting for his community, but as citizens of the U.S. or citizens of the world, what do you hope your audience is going to take away with?
I would just love, you know, as a journalist, when I view my role in our society as going out and finding hard to access information and putting it into the public sphere and making it readily accessible. And what I would love is to, you know, I think people within the CIA and even the Department of Defense have been aware of these trend lines now for coming up on over a decade. And yet our policymakers are not having robust discussions around these issues. And so I would love for people on both sides of, you know, the proverbial aisle to be aware of these issues. And they're only going to take them seriously if the public is aware of these issues. And that's why, you know, I agree full-heartedly that I want this information and the film to be seen by as many people as possible. You know, so I think that's one of my hopes, is just that in a democracy like ours, people can be informed and we can have a robust policy discussion around it.
That's right. And also, you know, is water, Nate brings us up quite a bit because of his knowledge about other countries and what their water policies are. But, you know, is water a national security issue? You know, is that how we need to view that in this country? Is it, you know, the agriculture law, the farm laws are so outdated. They haven't been updated for time immemorial. So those need to be updated. But also, again, I can, you know, talk about sort of how we eat and where we shop, and, you know, we're not eating locally. And now we understand why, you know, the gentleman in the film who talks about, you know, how we're demanding everything we want when we want it, and we throw away a third of it. So there's that side of it, which we can all as individuals do it differently. There's also science, you know, and is there a way to you know, science our way out of this? I mean, there are people creating food from thin air and things like that. So there's that compartment too. There's also, and then there's systemic, right? There's policy, there's legislation. And it's sort of like when Nate and I were just sort of like, oh gosh, we got to think about, you know, solutions and things like that. It's everybody can do something. Like, this isn't going to be sort of one solution, one sector with all the answers that's going to be able to get us out of this. And that includes the way we think. And again, as I always say, the way we do life. Like, all of these things have to shift a little bit. And everybody has to be able to get this word out, so we can get smart people's brains on this thing as soon as possible. Because at the rate that we're going, it's as the movie tells us in a very grim way, it's not looking good.
I think the movie you mentioned several times, the problem is solvable, and I think we all believe that. but there's also a lot of bad actors out there, so you're a lot more in the depths of all this. Are you, after spending 6 years on that, are you more optimistic or more pessimistic about the future? And if so, why?
I personally am very optimistic. And that's weird because of the movie we just made. But I think that it's because the moment we show this film to people, they're automatically asking the question that the woman just asked. Right now, I wish I could see you and look you in the eye and say, thank you for asking that, because the moment they watch the film, they say, everybody says, what can we do? Every single person says it. And they're not saying it in people are ready sort of to activate. And our problem is we just made this 6-year film and we're like, oh my gosh, we don't have like the 1-800 number yet. You know, we're barely building our website because we just got this thing out. But we're starting to kind of like foray into the solution space and sort of try to give people access to things that we can all do. But anyway, it makes me optimistic that, you know, you whatever, build it and they will come. You know, you show them the problem and everybody starts immediately looking around them and thinking like, what is it that I can do? And I love that roll up your sleeves quality that our country has and the world will have, hopefully, after learning the truth. But I do think that, you know, Nate is very, very kind about talking about, you know, filmmaking and so forth, but like, you know, we're nothing without investigative reporting. And I'm nothing. I have no film without Nate and without the team of reporters that assisted him. And it's safeguarding that institution and investigative reporting is completely crucial to being able to do anything. So, you know, investigative reporting is very difficult. It takes a long time, as I've learned firsthand by working with these people. It's risky. It costs money. And there's you have to be kind of comfortable with the end being a bit of a question mark of any story that you're going into. And so it's oftentimes not seen as this really easy, you know, like investment that people want to make. And yet it is completely crucial to our democracy. So if nothing else, continue to support investigative reporting.
Thanks, Gabriela. I would just also add, because I think the doom spiral that a lot of people can have when they look at trend lines and they look at some of the realities that we're facing, what we have to remember is that we're useless. We're useless if we're paralyzed by fear. We're useless if we're paralyzed by dismay. And at the end of the day, we're going to feel best by the work that we put in to do the best we can to create the best future we can. Each of us individually, us as a society, ultimately us as a global population of a species of humans, you know, like we should be doing everything we can. And I think that's the optimism. You know, let's figure this out. You know, if the scientists, the academics, the practitioners are telling us that this is still solvable, but if we don't solve it, it's going to be disastrous to the scale that we haven't experienced as a species. You know, let's get in there and get to work. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.